Since the dawn of cinema, viewers have enjoyed the thrill of being terrified by a whole cavalcade of movie monsters, everything from demons, witches, vampires to creatures from black lagoons. But there has always been something particularly chilling about ghosts. It's likely we all know somebody who has claimed to have seen a ghost before, a friend or family member, and maybe you think you've seen a ghost yourself. Whatever the case, somehow ghosts remain an elusive phenomena that have never been fully proven to exist or disproven. And maybe that's why we're drawn to them again and again in cinema. And trust me, there are a lot of super creepy ones, which we're about to show today. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are the 10 scariest movie ghosts ever. Number 10. The Librarian, Ghostbusters. Despite its title and premise, the movie Ghostbusters is actually not a horror movie. This classic 80s comedy may seem like a strange place to start when looking at the scariest ghosts in cinema, since nobody is going to be losing much sleep over Slimer or the Stay Puft Man. Now, these comedy ghouls and Bill Murray's dry quips are what many viewers remember most from Ghostbusters. But the movie's opening scene in the library, well, it provides a genuine scare. The librarian ghost appears as a spectral figure of an old lady silently browsing through books, and when the ghost-busting gang advance on her, she transforms into a hulking, roaring skeletal monster. The humor leading up to this scare, including the ghostly librarian hushing Bill Murray, disarms the viewer before smacking them with the monstrous metamorphosis. And it works for the movie that the first encounter with a ghost is actually frightening, because if the ghosts weren't scary, why would anyone bother to call the Ghostbusters? Number 9. Kayako, Ju-on the Grudge. Ju-on the Grudge is the story of two vengeful ghosts who are responsible for a series of deaths throughout a Japanese town. One of the ghosts is a small boy, Toshio, and the other is his mother, Kayako. Whenever an unlucky human spots Toshio, it means that his terrifying mother is nearby too, and she is certainly scarier than your typical ghost. For starters, there's her creepy death rattle that signals her presence, there's her jerky, inhuman movements crawling down the stairs and contorting like a wounded animal, and finally, there's her ability to appear from almost anywhere, under the bed sheets, even in your own hair. Lucky for me though, I'm bald. She can take the form of a shadow, appear on a television screen, or can just prank call you, but once you've been cursed, nowhere is safe. Number 8. Clapping Hands, The Conjuring. The ghoul that haunts the house in James Wan's The Conjuring is the spirit of Bathsheba Sherman, a woman who had hung herself in the garden of the home after indulging in nefarious witchcraftery. During most of The Conjuring, the source of the house's spooky goings-on remains unseen, and one only shows us the full image of Bathsheba a handful of times. The ghost is revealed to be a typical hag-like apparition, long tatty hair, grubby white gown, and witchy grotesque features. It's a nasty enough look for the movie's evil spirit, but you know what? Her design all feels rather bog-standard internet screamer face. And so we defer to the true scariest spirit of the film, and that is, weirdly, a pair of hands. In The Conjuring's best scene, matriarch Carolyn follows the sound of hand claps from the top floor of the house down into the pitch-black basement. And anyone that's ever seen a horror movie knows that a scare is incoming. And when Carolyn lights a match, we likely expect to see some gruesome face pop up from the gloom, but instead we get two hands appearing behind her and clapping. Now, reading this out sounds completely unscary, but often in horror movies, simplicity is what leads to the most effective scares. A pair of hands is scarier than a face because our imagination remains left to its own dark devices. Number 7. The Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, The Muppets Christmas Carol. The Muppets? Scary? Has this list fully gone off the rails? Now hold your horses, mate. This Dickensian phantom is one of the best designed ghosts that you will see on film, and is sure to scare the bejesus out of kids everywhere. This final spirit appears to Scrooge from a sea of ghostly fog. It towers over him, hands clasped and silent. Apparelled in a dark grey hood and cloak, it directs a faceless stare at Scrooge, with nothing but a vast black void where facial features should be. Its arms are unnervingly long, and its proportions are inhuman under its grim cloak. The ghost is the personification of death, namely Scrooge's, and just like death, it's impossible to bargain or plead with. It is cold and inevitable, and that is why we fear it. No wonder Gonzo and Rizzo make a hasty exit when this guy shows up. Number 6. Thomas. Now, children make for creepy ghosts because of the tragedy inherent in a child's death. So when we see the ghost of Thomas in the orphanage, the question isn't simply how has this child died, but also why is he wearing that weird sack on his head? As the sad history of the orphanage unfolds, both these questions are answered and the scares make way for a touching tale of the dead finding peace. He's such a memorable ghost because he almost looks like he could be a child in a Halloween mask. But there's just something about the design of this Hessian sack with its huge huge dark eye holes that resemble something between a scarecrow and an executioner's hood. Either way, when he first appears at the birthday party amongst the other masked children, he certainly seems more ghostly than the others. Number 5. The Old Woman. The Others. The Others is a brilliant riff on the gothic novella The Turn of the Screw, and more on that later, with Nicole Kidman looking after her 2 children in a haunted manor house. For most of the movie, all we know about the hauntings is that there are unseen others in the house, and the tension is built up and up and up way before any ghouls are shown. In the movie's most famous scene, Kidman notices something wrong with her daughter Anne. You see, Anne is playing on the floor with a marionette puppet, which is already seriously creepy behavior, while wearing a flowing white veil and dress which literally makes her look like a ghost. Kidman notices the hand protruding from the veil looks suspiciously old and veiny, and then we see that beneath the veil is not the face of a little girl, but of something other, something with corpse-like skin and dead milky eyes. Whereas a modern horror movie may have resorted here to a jump scare, a loud musical sting, or the notorious mouth becomes wide and shrieks tactic, instead this creepy apparition simply talks to Kidman with the voice of her child, sending Kidman into a violent rage. By the end of the movie, when it's revealed who the old lady really is, everything in The Others becomes far creepier. Number 4. The Girl in the Tent. The Sixth Sense. In a movie where a young boy can see dead people, there's plenty of ghosts to choose from for this list entry. Honorable mentions include the hanging ghost, the boy with the hole in his head, and the woman with the slashed wrists. But it's the scene with Cole inside his homemade tent that introduces the movie's most memorable spirit. Cole's tent begins to come apart by itself, and suddenly he's face to face with a gaunt, terrified girl who has vomit drooling from her mouth. Cole flees and the tent collapses around the spectre, leaving a lonely, ghostly shape. We later learn that this poor girl was gradually poisoned by her own mother. What makes this ghost so powerful is that she is too scared, unable to comprehend her fate, and taken before her time in such a cruel way. Number 3. Sadako, Ringu. With her long, lank black hair and thin, white-gowned figure, the image of Sadako, the vengeful Japanese spirit, has fully entered the public consciousness. She is a figure that immediately evokes not just death, but dread. Now, it may sound weird to suggest that the scariest thing about her design is her hair, but we viewers fear the unknown more than what we are shown, and by obscuring her face, what's made all the more terrifying. Throughout this story of a cursed videotape, her image appears on screen in the creepy footage, and if that wasn't scary enough, in the movie's finale, she escapes the confines of the screen and slowly crawls out of the television in a sequence that is every viewer's worst nightmare come true. She is gradual, inescapable, creeping death. Number 2. The Grady Twins, The Shining. The Shining is a haunted house story in which the spectres aren't directly harming its inhabitants, but rather driving the family patriarch into a murderous frenzy. Built on an Indian burial ground, the Overlook Hotel is home to many ghosts from its colourful past. Empty ballrooms become suddenly full with jazz-age revelers, with bartenders, waiting staff, and costumed deviants all arriving for the undead party. The woman in the bathtub who transforms from beautiful temptress to a rotting and cackling hag was a close contender for The Shining's scariest ghoul, but the iconic young twins are still the most chilling. Director Stanley Kubrick deliberately chose not to cast twins to play the part of twins, and this choice of forced symmetry gives the girls an immediate uncanniness. They're not doing anything scary, they're just there. When they invite Danny to play with them forever and ever, Kubrick intercuts their eerie words with bloody images of their dead bodies beside a huge axe. Little girls are supposed to be pure and innocent, and the true horror of the Grady twins is that they represent an innocence corrupted, violently butchered by their own father. And number 1, Miss Giselle, The Innocents. And speaking of corrupted innocence, what makes a movie ghost scary? Well, the simplest answer is that it makes you believe that you are seeing a real ghost. In Jack Clayton's adaptation of The Turn of the Screw, Miss Giselle is one of 2 ghosts alongside Mr. Quint that haunt Bly Manor. Miss Giselle is the scariest of the 2, perhaps because, as this list would suggest, female ghosts are somehow spookier than male ghosts. Is this something to do with the subversion of the maternal figure, or is the flowing silhouette of a lady in a dress just somehow more spectral? Either way, the scares in The Innocents work because they are subtle. She silently glides across the landing in the back of the frame, and when she's seen across the lake, she appears as a distant shadowy shape hidden amongst the reeds. The Innocents never undermines the credibility of its ghosts. You're never shown too much, and they remain unknowable, meaning that you're left believing in them.